Welcome back to the Latter-day Preparedness YouTube channel. You'll have to forgive me on this video. My allergies have been going nuts. This is like the third or fourth time I've started the video, but due to sneezing and nose blowing and stuff, I've had to stop. So I'm just going to try to get through this with the red eyes and the sneezing and all that stuff. On a previous video, we talked about water filters and water purifiers and way to get clean water in an emergency. On this video, I'm going to talk about stoves, and different type of cooking solutions in an emergency. So I'm going to start with the smallest and simplest, and I guess in most cases cheapest options, and go up from there. So the first stove I'll talk about is an alcohol stove. So this particular one is a stove that was given to me years ago. It's called the Solite stove, but you can make these with pop cans. Literally, you can make one in a half hour with a pop can. Um, you can also buy these pre-made like this one, but they're pretty cheap, 10 to 20 bucks. To use it, you fill the middle part with alcohol. This is a double wall stove, so this inner wall and outer wall, there's space between them. As you light the alcohol and as the stove heats up, the alcohol will turn into gas in between these walls and shoot out the sides, and flames will come out the sides once it's primed. And then you just set the stove you set the pot right on top. Let's see, I probably have a pot here. So then you just set the pot right on top here once the flames are coming out the side, and those flames are pressurized, so they work like jets and they burn extra hot, and it works pretty well. Alcohol stoves are, I guess the advantage of them is they're super light. They're really simple. All you need is this and some fuel. You can use alcohol, like rubbing alcohol or denatured alcohol. You can also use, and this is what I've used in the past mostly, there's a fuel additive that you can buy at 7-Eleven or an auto parts store. Most gas stations will have them, called Heat, Heet, and it works really well with these. You can also use what my buddy has used. He's gone to a liquor store and bought Everclear. Everclear is such a high proof alcohol that it burns clean, it burns well, and that's a cheaper option than Heat. Um, so you can do that. But anyway, lightweight, pretty simple. The disadvantage of something like this is they take a little while once you once you light them, take a little while to prime. They can blow out in the wind, so maybe some sort of a windscreen can be helpful. Once they're burning, they're kind of hard to blow out. Like if you are done cooking on it and there's still alcohol left, I usually just let the alcohol burn off. You can blow them out, but um, that's not always that easy. It's not like a candle that you just blow out with your mouth. So, um, anyway, that's an alcohol stove, and they are a a good simple option. I don't have one here, but you can get little Esbit alcohol stoves, and you buy these alcohol tablets, and the stove itself is just this little. I'll pull one up here on. Um, all right, let me share my screen here real quick. You can see on here. So here's some different type of stoves from this company, Esbit. These have been around for a long time. They're pretty cheap. These are alcohol tablets here, that are a solid fuel, so they're real easy to carry. One of these tablets will is essentially enough to boil a liter of water. But this particular stove is just a real light. This is made of titanium. This is a real light stove. It used to be popular among ultralight backpackers and stuff. People still use them that way, but this might be a good option albeit maybe a slightly more expensive option because of the titanium. But the one that I would suggest, only because it's so cheap and very simple, is this little pocket stove. You buy these little solid fuel alcohol tablets. Again, one will boil a liter of water, and then you set your pot on top of this little metal frame here. So that might be a good option. Those things are like $10 to buy, and then the fuel tablets are really cheap as well. So if you have one of these things with a packet of 10 or so fuel tablets, that's enough for about 2.5 gallons of water for like a 72-hour kit. That might be a good option if you have a small family. They're cheap, they're lightweight, you're not going to spill the fuel, that sort of thing. So that's another option, an alternative alcohol stove. All right, let's see. Stop share. The next one I'll talk about is a stove like this. This is the MSR brand version of essentially like a Jetboil. And it's a stove pot combination. Had this for a long time. I've used it for a long time, and it's a good stove. I prefer this over a Jetboil, mainly because it works a little bit better in cold conditions than Jetboils do. Jetboils, my experience with Jetboil is mostly positive in warm weather. But the first Jetboil I used it backpacking a dozen times in good weather. Then I used it once on a winter camping trip, and it took so long to melt snow and boil water. It was just such a pain. They work so poorly in really cold weather that I kind of swore that I would never use them again. Um, in place of that, I bought this stove, which is called a Reactor, also made by MSR, and it works great in the cold. It is small and compact. It screws onto the top of one of these butane canisters, which is same type of canister that this stove works for. And then the pot fits on here. It's a great option for boiling water only. It's so hot. It burns so hot that you can only boil water with it. If you try to cook on it, you'll just burn your food. But for boiling water, if you have like freeze-dried food in your 72-hour kit or in your food storage, this is a great option. It's super, super efficient. I have backpacked with my family, cooked for 4 or 5 people for 1 week, morning and night, with 1 canister of fuel. So it's really, really efficient, probably twice as efficient as most other butane stoves or stoves that use these butane canisters. This wind boiler is almost as efficient as this. It's not as good in the cold as the Reactor, but it's cheaper, it's lighter. It is still much better in my experience than a Jetboil in the cold. Jetboils are awesome though. They've gotten better over the years. They still don't work great in the cold, but there are some that have a fuel regulator that do work slightly better in the cold, but they're not my choice. But they are a good choice, especially if you live in climates that don't get super, super cold. I live up in the mountains of Utah, and around here it's quite cold. So as an emergency cooking option, um, I I want stoves that work really well in the cold in case we have an emergency in the winter. Anyway, those are some good options. Um, so my choice for my family is the Reactor, and I keep this on hand for long-term cooking as well as emergency cooking, and mainly because it's so efficient at boiling water. We have a bunch of freeze-dried food in our food storage. It makes up maybe a quarter to a third of our food storage. And so in that situation, it is more efficient for me to boil water to make freeze-dried food, to reconstitute freeze-dried food, than it is to use a bigger 2-burner stove or that sort of thing. So I keep this on hand for the freeze-dried food. And then I have a box of about 30 or so canisters. I figure that that is enough to boil water for my family for probably at least 20 weeks worth of freeze-dried food eating morning and night. So that's a good option for me. If I were to have something like this or a stove like this, this is just a more traditional style butane stove. If I had something like this, I would probably say that this is maybe slightly better than half as efficient as the reactor. And so in that case, if this was my choice, which is a fine choice, it doesn't work great in the cold again, but it's a fine choice. These are $30 or so, 30 to $50 depending on the brand and model. I would say in this case, that box of 30 butane canisters is probably maybe good for half the amount of time that the reactor is. I would maybe say 10 to 15 weeks worth of cooking for my family or boiling water for freeze-dried food. These types of stoves, depending on the stove, but this one in particular, it's got a kind of a wide burning surface. You can simmer with these, you can actually cook with these, but of course, cooking uses a lot more fuel than just boiling water. So for all these isobutane canister stoves, I just use them for boiling water mostly and using for freeze-dried food. This is a cool stove, I think, because I've got another canister here. Because it folds up real compact and lays flat. Stick it in this little storage. Stick it in this little storage pouch thing. This will fit on the bottom of a canister, and that's your own little package. And then this will fit in a little pot there, and you've got kind of a cool pot stove fuel situation. This is a titanium pot, real lightweight for backpacking, really only good for boiling water. Titanium doesn't disperse heat as well as aluminum, and so if you're cooking with a titanium pot, you'll burn the food as well because you just get a real hot small spot on the stove or on the pot. And so not as good for cooking, but for boiling water, they work fine. Anyway, this is a nice compact option. I would keep this in a 72-hour kit and use it for if I'm having to grab my stuff and leave my home, or keep it in a backpack in my car in case I have car emergencies, that sort of thing. This is a good option. This is also a good option. With this, the stove itself fits in the pot, but this particular pot is too small to fit a canister, so maybe not quite as good, but you can put other stuff in there if you're trying to save room, lighter and other things. But so anyway, and then again, the reactor's maybe not as compact and small and lightweight as the others, but still quite lightweight. This will whoops. This will fit in the pot. This will fit over the top of it, so you can fit the pot and stove in here. So if you look at the size difference, there's a pretty decent size difference. I love this one though because of how efficient it is. Boils water so quickly, uses such small amount of fuel, and works so well in the cold. So anyway, those are some good options for stoves. And I'll tell you that there are so many good options for these types of stoves on the market. Some of my favorite brands, Soto, S-O-T-O, they're a Japanese brand. They make a lot of real compact stoves like this one. This one is from a company called Optimus. They've been making stoves for a long time. They're owned by Katadyn. If you saw the water filter video, I like Katadyn filters a lot. Their Optimus is owned by Katadyn. Optimus makes great stoves. So these are butane stoves. There are also white gas stoves that I won't get into too much on this video. They're more complicated to use. There are some advantages. They work better in cold weather because those stoves will use a fuel bottle for white gas. So white gas is a liquid. But you use a fuel bottle with those and then you pump to pressurize the fuel bottle. So the challenge with stoves that use a canister like this is when you get in the cold, the pressure of the canister goes way down, then it doesn't burn as hot or as efficiently. A white gas stove, because you have a fuel bottle that you can pressurize yourself, if it gets cold, you can just you can just pump the fuel bottle and increase the pressure and they'll burn really well in the cold or in the warm weather. It doesn't really matter. So that's an advantage there. Disadvantage about white gas stoves is they're a little more finicky to use. You have to prime them. And if you have a white gas stove with a fuel bottle, you definitely want to practice, learn how to use it well. Many people have melted big holes in their tents and stuff because they're cooking in a tent with a white gas stove and didn't know how to use it. And you get a big fireball of flames coming off of those stoves sometimes if you don't use it correctly. So I won't get into those here, but a white gas stove is an option for someone who has experience with them. So that's that. Getting into some bigger cooking options. I don't have it here to show, but you've got 2-burner stoves. Jetboil makes a cool one. Let's see. Let me share my screen here. All right, so this is the Genesis 2-burner stove. The cool thing about this is it comes with a pot, the stove, everything that fits together in a relatively compact size. That probably, when it's all packed up, is about the size of a normal cooking pot, maybe like a 4-liter cooking pot that you would have just in your home. So not super compact, but the fact that it is a 2-burner stove, and it can actually be a 3-burner stove. You can connect this little accessory here on the end with the pot for boiling water. But you've got a 2-burner stove and a relatively compact system. So that's a good option if you have a big family and you need something portable. There are other 2-burner stoves. Lots of different options for compact too. You got your traditional like Coleman 2-burner stove. Those work fine. Let's see, Front Runner has one here. These are Front Runner's a popular brand among like overland type people. But anyway, there's a lot of different 2-burner stoves. You've probably seen them all. There's a lot of different options, but they all are pretty similar in the way that they're made and how they work. So that's an option. These just aren't quite as compact as the Jetboil ones, but Maybe there's some advantages to them. And then I have a 2-burner stove here that's not portable, but it's maybe a little better option. Let me stop sharing here. This Camp Chef 2-burner stove, it has built-in legs and that sort of thing. So not portable, but you can see that over there. So you've got in this one, you can get these in 2-burner or 3-burner options. This one obviously is a 2-burner option. Kind of nice when it folds open. You've got some counter space for food prep and some of those types of things. It runs off of propane. You can use a big propane bottle for that. So we keep this at our house as a backup option. If for example, we had an earthquake and our gas lines were compromised and we couldn't use our gas stove at home, then we can use propane or this stove to cook off of. Some advantages to propane is that propane lasts forever. You can store it forever. It never goes bad. And so we fill up some propane canisters, keep them in our garage, and don't worry about them. We have a gas grill that we use propane for, and so we do have to refill our propane canisters every once in a while, but we keep 3 or 4 20-pound propane canisters in our garage, and we feel like that in combination with this stove or our grill is a good option to cook with in a long-term emergency. That in combination with this reactor stove and this oven here, which I'll get into in a minute, is kind of a good cooking option. We have one other way of cooking that we would rely on in an emergency. We have a bunch of different ways of cooking, which I feel is important because you never, I don't know, having some redundancy just gives me peace of mind. So I've got the canister stoves, that reactor for boiling water. I've got this oven here. It's a solar oven, which is good for, I can bake with it. I can sterilize water with it. I can cook food with it on sunny days, and then not use any fuel. But the disadvantage with that is, of course, it only works when it's sunny and not every day is sunny. Here in Utah, about half the year is sunny enough that you can cook with the stove. Maybe a little less than half the year, and then the rest it's just a little too cloudy or too um, either completely cloudy or partly cloudy, and it just doesn't heat up enough to be able to cook with it. So um, anyway, so propane stoves, it's a good option, but not the only option. And then this solar oven here, this is by a brand, it's called All American Sun Oven. Um, had this for many years. I used to cook with it a bunch because I thought it was fun. I haven't cooked with it in a while, but it's good if you get one of these that you practice because they are, it takes a little bit of practice to use them. But essentially you've got this oven area in here. There's a little tray that's let's see here. There's a little self-leveling tray here because you'll tip this on its side and point it toward the sun. And so this little tray is sort of self-leveling. You set your pots or whatever you're cooking in here. You tilt this and point it toward the sun. Close it up. It's a tight seal. there. It locks that down. And then you unfold this. And this is this helps to catch the sun and point it into the oven. So when you're using this, and this is pointed directly at the sun, the oven can heat up to 400 degrees. So you can like bake bread with it even, which is pretty impressive. I have baked cookies and breads in it. I have also cooked lasagna, cooked cooked chicken. I've cooked a bunch of different things in it, and it works really well. One of the disadvantages, obviously, other than you can't use it unless it's sunny, is you have to go about every 20 to 30 minutes. You have to go and reposition it as the sun moves across the sky. You want to reposition it. It works pretty well as a slow cooker. If you just point it in the general direction of the sun, it'll never heat up to its full heat. And it's essentially works like a slow cooker. You can just leave it out there for many hours. But if you want to bake with it and you want the temperature to stay high, you have to reposition it every 20 to 30 minutes to keep the temperature up. There is a little stand on the back that's adjustable, so you can tip it down at different angles so you can make sure you've got it pointed directly at the sun. I think I got this mainly because I thought it was a cool idea, and it would be a good. Thought it was a cool idea, and thought it would be good to have on hand. But really, I got one because I thought it was kind of this cool science experiment thing that would be fun to use and fun to use with my kids and stuff like that. Like I said, after I got it for the first year or two, I used it a bit, practiced with it. Probably in the last 5 years, I haven't used it at all, and I just have it on hand just in case. Um, so that's a solar oven, obviously too big and heavy to be portable, but a good option for an emergency where we're staying put at home. So another cooking solution that we use is an Instant Pot. So it's a digital pressure cooker essentially, and runs off of batteries or runs off of electricity. So that's a challenge to use if you don't have electricity, of course. I have a solar battery generator, if you will. It's like a big battery bank that puts out enough electricity that I can run an Instant Pot off of it. If I were to run that Instant Pot constantly, that battery would run out in about an hour. The thing that's cool about Instant Pots is that because they're pressure cooker, they cook things really quickly. And even like brown rice, which with a rice cooker or on a stovetop might take 90 minutes or so to cook. It only takes about 15 minutes to cook brown rice in an Instant Pot, and white rice literally takes like 3 or 4 minutes. So it uses battery to heat up, but once it's at full heat, then it hardly uses any battery to maintain that heat. So I've found that with an Instant Pot, I can run it off a battery, an external battery bank, um, and cook. I can cook a dinner, in 10 minutes or so off of there, and it only uses about maybe 15% of my battery life from my battery bank. My battery that I use is from a company EcoFlow. So my battery bank is this EcoFlow Delta. It stores 1 kilowatt of battery, so 1,000 watts. The Instant Pot uses 1,000 watts per hour to run it. So if I use it for about 15 minutes, that'll use about approximately 25% of the battery bank. Now, a lot of our food storage, we have white rice. We have some brown rice in our food storage. Most of it's white rice. So white rice cooks super fast. I would maybe only use 5 or 10 minutes of power with the Instant Pot in that situation. maybe 10 minutes because it has to heat up. And then with white rice, maybe 15 minutes of battery. But like I said, once the Instant Pot heats up, then it really doesn't draw any more power after that. To maintain that temperature level, it just hardly takes any energy at all. So they're pretty efficient for cooking in that matter. And then I have a solar panel. Stop sharing here. Then I have a solar panel that connects to that battery bank to recharge it. So that's a good solar cooking option, I guess. And we have that for, so we would use the solar oven, we would use the Instant Pot with the battery and a solar panel, then the propane stove kind of as our cooking options after a big earthquake or something if we're having to cook long term and our gas stove isn't available. If our gas stove is available but power's out, we can actually run our stove off of using that battery bank because the gas itself obviously continues to work for the stove top, but if we want to use our oven, then um, the little computer, whatever that controls temperature and timer and that sort of thing needs electricity for that. So we can plug our stove into the battery bank and then still use the oven if we have gas going to the oven. But in like an earthquake, that may not be available. And so then we have some of these other cooking options for that. So to recap, you want some lightweight, compact stove option to go in your 72-hour kit. Alcohol stoves, Esbit stoves, uh, these butane canister stoves, that MSR reactor, all of those are good options. You only need probably one canister, even if you've got a big family, because that'll pretty easily last 2 or 3 days of cooking in an emergency. Some people don't even put a stove in a 72-hour kit, which is fine, of course. They just have non-cooked food, I guess, granola bars and other things for 72 hours worth of stuff. And that's maybe a smart way to go. But I find that for morale, especially if it's cold out, it's nice to have hot food or hot chocolate or something. So we keep hot chocolate in our 72-hour kit because it provides some calories, of course, but it also provides um, a pick me up. Having something sweet, having something hot and warm is a pick me up, especially if it's cold out. And so we do keep a stove in our 72-hour kit. And then yeah. Anyway, I'm sure there are a lot of other great cooking options out there. If you have some cooking options that I didn't talk about that you really like, please leave those in the comments. Um, but these are kind of some of the solutions that we have in our family. All of the cooking options that we have in our family, other than maybe the solar oven back here, we use for a lot of different things. This stove we use camping. These other stoves we use backpacking. We usually do maybe 3 or 4 trips during the summer backpacking as a family, or my wife and I. Um, so we're using, the Instant Pot we use for cooking, all that type of stuff. So it's not like we bought this and then we store it and waiting for a big emergency. We use them all the time. But it's nice to have these things on hand in an emergency. And it's nice that we use them all the time so that we don't have to learn how to use them again in an emergency. So I would encourage that. Buy stuff that you think you'll use regularly, so then you know how to use them. And then it doesn't feel like you're spending tons of money and then you're waiting around for something bad to happen so that you can finally use it. Anyway, that's my video for today. Again, if you have some good cooking solutions, leave those in the comments, and we can talk about those on future videos. Thanks for watching. If you haven't already, please subscribe and give us a like. You never know when hard times are going to happen naturally, but sometimes you can see it coming. And I feel like we live in a time where hard times are going to reach just about everybody. In fact, I believe it's prophesied in scripture that hard times are going to reach everybody. So some level of preparedness, physical preparedness, temporal preparedness is important. And if you do what you can and then trust in the Lord, um, to qualify your efforts to I think that we can live with a little bit more peace. At least me as a dad, I feel an obligation to be prepared to take care of my family no matter what happens. And so I find peace of mind having plans in place and stuff in place so that if an emergency happens, I'm prepared. So anyway, hopefully some of this information here helps you to prepare and helps you have a little bit of peace of mind as well. So that's it for today. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you on the next episode.